Well, good morning and welcome to Monday morning. Monday morning. It is August the 22nd this morning, and we have to pick up part two of the Devo we started for Saturday, Man's Ways and God's Ways. Man's Ways and God's Ways. And we read through the Beatitudes, how much different God's ways are there than what our ways are. Um, Left to our own devices, we are really in trouble. He suggested to us, and ended with the question, very piercing question: are you a greedy person? And that was based off the prodigal son story. Remember the older son, when his younger brother came home, he was all bent out of shape for how well his brother was received, and he lays claim to, I've done everything around here. I've kept all the rules. I've been a faithful son, and yet you don't do that for me. That sounds greedy, doesn't it? And so he ended with that. Are you a greedy person? He only saw, that older son only saw what he was losing and not what he was gaining. So we continue on this morning. I've never met anyone who admitted to being greedy. I've encountered people who will confess to being gluttonous and prideful, and others who will say they have a problem with lust or anger, but I've never heard anyone admit greed. I've had deep and intimate conversations with thousands of people about the most personal aspects of their lives, but nobody has ever said to me, I like money too much. And nobody ever thinks of themselves as stingy. I've met some monumentally stingy people, but they think they are generous. We don't see ourselves as we really are. God's ways are not man's. The other point that is essential to realize is that God's ways are not simply a minor adjustment of our own. They often represent the opposite end of the spectrum. Jesus invites us to a change in attitude, but that alone is not enough. Ultimately, that change in attitude should lead to a change in behavior. We open this section with the verse from Isaiah, your thoughts are not my thoughts, nor are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. It's interesting that a connection is made here between thoughts and action. What we spend our days and weeks thinking about has an enormous impact on our actions. What are you thinking? As you make your way to work each day, or as you are waiting in the doctor's office or standing in the grocery store line, in those moments between activities, what do you think about? I know this for certain. Whatever we spend these apparently inconsequential moments thinking about will increase in our lives. Few things will have more impact on your life than what you allow to occupy your mind. Use these times to ponder the ways of God, and you will find yourself living them. Ponder the gospel, and you will find yourself living it. This path is well trodden. For 2,000 years, all those who have had any success in the Christian life, the great champions of Christianity, have had this in common. They all pondered the life and teaching set forth in the Gospels. Are you a gospel thinker? So much of our frustration in life is caused by rejecting the gospel and trying to find a worldly solution to a spiritual problem. Every problem we experience has a spiritual dimension to it, but often we leave the spiritual dimension of things unconsidered. The ways of God set out in the Gospels challenge our priorities. They remind us what matters most and what matters least. And make no mistake, it's not easy to walk in these ways. But the fruits of his ways are abundant. He will replace your confusion with clarity and wisdom. He will replace your anxiety with peace. And he will fill you with gratitude and joy even in the midst of great difficulty. God is with us, even when we think he is not. God is in control, even when it appears that those who hate him are in control. And God is at work in our lives, even when it appears that everything is falling apart. God has a different way of doing things. a better way. How we see other people and the world is at the core of the human experience. The gospel equips us with a new lens, and through this lens we see other people, God, the world, and ourselves in a fundamentally different way than we did before. This is the Jesus effect. It changes our priorities, and by elevating them, it transforms the way we live and who we become. Are you thriving or just surviving? If you're not thriving, why not? Perhaps it is time to abandon man's ways and embrace God's. Sometimes people ask, how will I know when I am embracing God's ways more? It's a great question. Here is an easy litmus test. When you become less self-focused and more focused on others. When you become less self-focused and more focused on others. That defines the life of the church, does it not? We're warned a couple of times by Paul not to think more highly of ourselves than we ought to think, and to think of others more highly in the serving of them. Jesus himself, I didn't come to be served. I came to serve. This is one of those places where we don't see our shortcomings. I think that was the previous, blind spots. We don't see that the choices we're making are more self-motivated than other motivated, Christ motivated. Here's your point to ponder. God has a better way of doing things. I think in business and in so many ways, people do an evaluation. God has a better way of doing things. Am I doing things in that better God way, or still doing things in my own way? The verse to live, Proverbs 19:21, the human mind may devise many plans, but it is the purpose of the Lord that will be established. Question to consider, what is one practical example of how God is inviting you to let go of your way and open yourself to his way? And the prayer, Lord, teach me to value your way of doing things above all other ways, above all other ways. That's at the heart of following Christ. May we choose that way more than we choose the wrong way. Blessings to you today.